Hey everyone, the purpose of this video is to go over the poetry quiz on the poem On Being Brought from Africa to America by Phillis Wheatley. So I'm going to go through each question and talk about the correct answer and why it's the correct answer, as well as hopefully offer some helpful tips for you as you go through these question styles and the different skills on these questions. So this first question is a tone question. So remember, tone is the author's feelings towards whatever it is they're talking about. So we got to make sure we keep that in mind. Every time I go through one of these questions, I would look up on my resource guide to remind myself of what these different things are. If it says tone, then I'm going to look up tone and make sure I understand what that is. Then I'll look at the tone list too to go through some of those tone words, although not all the options in your questions may be on the tone list, but that's still helpful to use. So this question states that the writer's tone at the opening of the poem, lines 1 through 4, may best be described as either curious, annoyed, scholarly, or grateful. So I'm going to go back to those lines, obviously, and reread them. And I'm going to ask myself what the subject is of those first 4 lines and how I think that the speaker may feel towards that subject. And I've got to open up the poem. I thought I had it open already, but I do not. Okay, so lines 1 through 4 read, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land." So the speaker is talking in first person here. "Taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God, that there's a Savior too. Once I redemption neither sought nor knew." So what she's talking about here is being brought, and the title here helps us. I would always look back at the title to help me understand the poem as a whole. She's talking about being brought from her pagan land, which we can infer is Africa because that first line says that she's brought from my pagan land. The title of this is being brought from Africa, so we can assume that she's talking about Africa here. So that's the subject. And also being brought, and when she's gotten here, taught, right? Benighted, hopefully you looked it up, it means ignorant. Taught her ignorant soul to understand that there is a God and there's a Savior, and that she never knew this sort of redemption before when she lived in Africa. So that's what she's talking about, is being brought to America and learning Christianity. So how does she feel about this? So let's go back to the question. She's not curious, right? Because she knows exactly what's happening. It's not like she's really wondering about something. She's more making a statement. She's definitely not annoyed by being brought here because we can see here she uses the word mercy and redemption, which are both very positive words in relation to what she's talking about here of being brought, and that she now understands, which is normally a positive word as well. So she's not annoyed at all. Scholarly, this might be helpful to look at the tone list if you don't know what this means. So the tone list is inside the resource guide, which is in the class resources page. Just click on English to Resource Guide. And here we go. Scholarly, I'm sure you don't know what erudite means, but hopefully we know what learned means, okay? Someone who's really knowledgeable and kind of like professional and intelligent, and someone who's like clean and polished. All right, so does she feel like she's in a really scholarly position here towards being brought from Africa to America? Not really, right? So now we're left with this last answer, grateful. Do we think that she's grateful and happy that she was brought from Africa to America in the first place? Well, yeah, because she was taught here that there's a God and that she has redemption, that she's been saved. So she is grateful for this experience in her life. So that is the correct answer. D. Okay. 70% of you guys got this, so good job to most of you. So hopefully that was helpful for anyone who did not get that question. I just would say with tone questions, always try to determine what you think it is that the author's talking about, and then ask yourself the question, what or how does she feel towards this subject? Question 2. This is a reading comprehension question. So this means you should be able to just find the answer in the poem itself. So in lines 1 through 3, Wheatley explains how A, she finds slavery to be the worst of humanity's inventions. B, Africa's religion was more comforting than Christianity. C, she misses her home in Africa and hates the white God. Or D, she was brought to America and taught Christianity. So now we just need to look back at lines 1 through 3 and find out which of those answers reflect what happened there. So those are the same lines that we just read. And hopefully we know that the answer by now, after talking about it, is that she's simply stating that she came from Africa to learn Christianity. She doesn't have any negative feelings about it, so we know that C is not right and that B is not right, because she actually called Africa pagan. And pagan is a pretty negative word, like a godless place. Okay. And then A, she finds slavery to be the worst of humanity's inventions. Well, she probably doesn't like slavery, right? Because she's an African American fighting for civil rights. And she's a really renowned African American poet and proud of who she is. I'm sure she finds slavery to be terrible, but that is not at all what she's talking about in this poem. So the answer is D, simply that she was brought to America and taught Christianity. 84% of you guys got that one, so most of us were on the same wavelength, so that's good. Question 3. This is a diction/tone question. So remember, anytime you see one of these Englishy words like diction, you're going to want to look in your resource guide and see what that means. And diction is the author's word choice. So, which of the following examples of diction, so the author's word choice, display Wheatley's gratitude toward Christians? This question is directly related to question 1. So if you got D as the right answer, then you should have a pretty good idea here. And actually, this is kind of a sign of a test that we may not have looked over quite well enough, but this question kind of gives away the answer for question 1. So I would keep that in mind as you go to take the test. See if any of the questions can hint to the answer for other questions. Kind of like a shortcut around some of these questions. All right, so we already talked about how, and this is where you have to be very careful. All right, so which of these words? It could be just the first word, mercy, 1, or A. It could be B, only benighted, which remember means ignorance. It could be C, both mercy and benighted. Or D, mercy, benighted, and scornful. So we already know that mercy is talking about how she is thankful for coming to America to be saved. And benighted shows her gratitude too, because she's thankful to the Christians in America, because she was ignorant before. Without them, she would have never known about Christianity in the first place. So that highlights how she did kind of need them, and how she is grateful for that. Now let's look at scornful. Where does this come up into the poem? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line. Let's read that. Some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolical dye. So this word scornful isn't even talking about her coming from Africa to America at this point. It's talking about how some white colonists in America don't view African Americans in a positive way. They think they're worthless. They think they are lower than they are. So it's kind of not even talking about her being grateful at all. It's actually talking about how people are being racist. So we know that that word does not prove her gratitude toward Christians, because it has nothing to do with that. So we're left with C, both mercy and benighted. You got to read these questions very carefully and make sure that you consider each answer. Sometimes it could be all of them. Sometimes it could just be one. Other times it could be 2. Let's go to question 4. We have another tone question, and this talks about the tone shift, which if you did the TAPCAST steps correctly, that can help you answer these questions about tone shift. So, why does Wheatley's tone shift from one of gratitude to one of criticism in line 7? Is it because she's arguing that African Americans need to convert to Christianity in order to be saved? Or B, she's arguing that whites should not have brought slaves from Africa? C, she's trying to show white Christians' attitude toward African Americans? Or D, she's trying to show that all people may be religiously saved and are therefore equal? So let's look at line 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. says, remember Christians, Negroes, black as Cain. So she's referring to two different people groups here. She's referring to Christians and Negroes, so the African Americans. So she's arguing that African Americans need to convert to Christianity. No, not in that line necessarily, and she's talking to two people groups, not just African Americans. She's arguing that whites should not have brought slaves from Africa. Nope, she's not criticizing that idea at all in this poem. C, she's trying to show white Christians' attitude toward African Americans. No, because she's talking to Negroes as well. And then D, she's trying to show that all people may be religiously saved and are therefore equal. Yeah, that makes sense because she's talking to both people groups, both the Africans coming from Africa and the Christian white colonists. So D is the correct answer. Another tone question. Question 5. Here we have, and by the way, for 3, only 38% of you guys got that right. So I'm thinking that's a problem with this style of question that we're probably not used to. So just read these super carefully. 4, 38% again got this one. So I'm not sure what went wrong here, but if somebody wants to email me and explain what they were thinking with that question, I would love to see your thought process on it so I can help you through that. Back to question 5. So only 38% again got this one right. So the author uses which of the following literary devices in lines 5 through 6? So this is a poetry term question. So let's look at all these. We have alliteration, assonance, and end rhyme, lines 5 through 6. So we need to go back to the poem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have some view our stable race with scornful eyes, line 5, and their color is a diabolical dye. So we're looking for alliteration. Yep, we have alliteration. Diabolical dye. That repetition of the D sound in the beginning of those words next to each other is exactly what alliteration is. Okay, so we're good on that one. Also assonance. Let's see if there's assonance. Some view our sable race. So that repetition of the A sound right next to each other is an example of assonance, as well as diabolical dye, because we have that I sound that's repeated. Okay, remember assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in words nearby. And then finally we have end rhyme, so we have to look at the last word of both of those lines, I and die. Yep, both of those rhyme. Let's go back to the question. So we have, is it just alliteration? Is it just end rhyme? Is it alliteration and assonance, or is it all 3? And the correct answer in this case is all 3. Question 6. All right, I believe this is just a reading this is an inference question. So we have to make an inference as to who she's talking about in line 6. Is she talking about the Bible, or is the Bible talking? Is the women talking? Is the Protestant church talking, or are the white colonists talking? So their color is a diabolical dye. This is somebody saying something, so we know that that's dialogue because of the quotes. So some view our sable race with scornful eyes. So we know it's not the Africans who are talking here because that's who's being talked about. We also know it's not the Christians because she's very thankful for the Christians. So the Christians have treated them with love and have brought them into their religion. So we're not talking about the Christians. Bible can't talk out loud like this, so we are left with white colonists. All right, the Protestant church are Christians, so we're left with the white colonists. This brings me to the point that if you ever have questions about any of the options in any given question, jump onto Zoom and ask me about them. If you don't know what the Protestant church is, you can ask me, or you can look up on Google what the Protestant church is. And that would have told you that those are just the Christians who came from England to America to establish themselves away from the tyranny of the English government and Catholicism. Question 7. We have another poetry term question, and let's see, only 23% of you guys got this one right, so we're still having trouble with poetry terms. So we have lines 7 through 8, and we're looking at simile, allusion, or metaphor. So let's go to those last 2 lines of this poem. Remember Christians, black as Cain. Okay, remember Christians, Negroes, black as Cain. So we have Negroes being compared to this person Cain, using the word as. So yeah, this is a simile. And then you might not know who Cain is, but you should at least be like, who is Cain? Look that up on Google if you don't know who it is they're talking about, and you would have found out that Cain is a character from the Bible. So this is an allusion to a character from the Bible. And you would also find out that Cain is somebody who early in the Old Testament killed his brother Abel. He murdered him. So that could show you and highlight what they're saying about Negroes, that both Christians and Negroes are sinful, just like Cain was. And now let's look at this last line. So that's allusion, right? We have allusion, we have simile. Let's look at metaphor. May be refined and join the angelic train. Guys, we're not talking about a literal train here, okay? They're talking about the pathway to heaven, all right? So she's saying that Christians, Negroes alike, all sinners can be refined, can be renewed, and can be on that path to heaven, all right? Train is often a symbol for journey or passageway to something else. So the answer here is, again, all three. C. And lastly, we have question 8, which is a theme question, which most of you guys got this right. Wasn't super difficult. For here, I just do process of elimination. Which thematic statement best expresses the poem? A, there is no hope for African Americans in America. If you read this poem closely, hopefully you know this is not the right answer. She's talking about how there is hope. It's the opposite, actually. B, there's no justice for African Americans. No, she's not actually focused on the racism toward African Americans here. She's focused on the Christian religion that a lot of African Americans adopted once they moved to America. C, the loss of one's home creates suffering. No, she's very happy here, actually. She's thankful that she's been brought to America. And then D, all races are equal in the eyes of God. We're left with that. She's right. She's talking about all white colonist Christians and all Negroes alike can join the angelic train to heaven. So the answer is D. Email me, meet on Zoom if you have any questions about any of these. But that's it.